Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Thriving Adoptees podcast. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Aubrey Jackson. Welcome to the show, Aubrey. Looking forward to our conversation today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. So, Aubrey, you're one of the younger guests that we've had on the show, right?
Thank you.
Did I ask you how old you are? Did you just tell me? I don't know. A gentleman shouldn't ask these things, right?
No, you're fine, but I'm gonna take a page from the title of the podcast. I am in my 30s and thriving. There we go.
Cool. So what does thriving mean to you, Aubrey?
Thriving is definitely a personal experience. It's a personal journey, because thriving, in my opinion, it doesn't look the same for everyone. Thriving for one person can be getting up and taking something off their to-do list. Thriving for another person can be setting a boundary and holding true to it. Thriving can be taking part in some self-care and really choosing yourself, especially when we're talking about adoptees, where a lot of our experiences are outward more than inward. So I think thriving is a great word when you're thinking of someone who is really just ascending to the best version of themselves.
Okay. Can you tell me a little bit about the outward inward thing? That intrigues me.
Yeah, when you think about an adoptee's experience, and I'll just speak from my own, but having gone through my own journey of first discovering that I was adopted and then going through the process of trying to learn more about my lineage and my bloodline, the decision to be placed for adoption for those who are in a closed adoption, that is a choice beyond your control. So once you are born into a scenario where a decision was made without your counsel, now granted, I do think parents who make that decision do it out of love, and maybe given the circumstances in their lives, it seemed like the best decision. But for the adoptee, that's hard. That's not really always easy to process, because a lot of times you just want your parent, you just want your mother.
Yeah.
And that outward versus inward is when you're thinking about the act itself, you're looking at the person who made that decision. But then once you put yourself in your shoes, you have to go inward and say, well, if I was in that position, would that have been the best choice? And from my experience, it happened for me when I turned the age that my mother was when she had me, which was at 23. And I was in my first job. I had just recently graduated from college, and I couldn't even keep a goldfish, Simon, let alone a child. So it was that year that I turned from being angry at my mother's decision to being grateful, because I realized, that there's a lot of other things she could have done, and she chose to give me life. And so you go from outward to inward, and that's really where the healing starts.
Yeah. So what does healing mean for you, Aubrey?
Healing is not linear. And I really encourage those listening to give themselves grace, because healing is something you have to work at every day, and it looks different for everyone. And whether it's a support group for adoptees, or you're enlisting the help of like a therapist or someone who can really help you work through the day-to-day, because once you are informed that you're adopted, and then you start to have all the questions, and rightfully so, that come up, and some of them only you can answer, some of them only you can fill in the blanks, and that goes to the value, self-worth, and just really pouring into yourself, versus wanting to know your last name and all of that. That's on a piece of paper that you can through the right channels get access to. But to me, healing is something that you have to work at every day, and there's never going to be a day where you're like done. A lot of people say like, oh, if you go and do this, you'll get the closure. It's something that you have to really be pragmatic about, and choose yourself by saying, today I'm going to make sure that I do or enlist of the things that my therapist suggested, or being really putting yourself accountable by joining those support groups, finding your tribe, and just surrounding yourself with people that can really nurture you through that experience. Because it's tough. It's an emotionally taxing and financially tolling, depending on which route you go, to deal with something like this. And especially if you don't have that support system, it's hard.
Yeah. Before we started recording, Aubrey mentioned Chatra's website, which is called Grow Beyond Words. And I'm going to put a link in the show notes on there, because there's a lot of the therapy. We've had a lot of the therapists on that directory on the show. But it's separated out into the individual states, and some of these therapists also do online therapy, teletherapy, and things like that, so people can find out that. So that's a great resource. This is adoptees who do therapy for fellow adoptees. So they're coming from lived experience. They're coming from being there and know this stuff. They're not coming from a theoretical. They're coming from practice, not theory.
Absolutely, yeah.
So we're going to put that link in the show notes. The other thing that I saw on your website, Aubrey, is that you're into personal development, and I spent a lot of time in that area, and it's not something that I see. Well, I hear a lot of adoptees talking about, right? So most of the story, most of the focus is on trauma rather than personal development. So what does personal development mean to you?
And that's a really great assessment that you mentioned, because I think when someone is able to reach that level in their journey where they're wanting to continue on and develop to being the best version of themselves, it means that they went through that difficult stage early on, which happens around the time where you know that you're adopted, and then you're trying to piece together and find out, do you want to know your lineage and your bloodline, and being respectful and understanding of the adopted family. There's steps to it for sure. And I think if someone is still in that stage of trying to understand and process their emotions of finding out, they have to go through that before they can reach the point in their journey where they're saying, you know what, I have come to terms with it. I've found my tribe. I've enlisted the right counsel to get me through this and to really help me thrive and be the best version of myself. And then that's when you reach the personal development, where you're being very diligent of continuing on with that practice, and also encouraging others to do the same. Because this is the first time I've publicly spoken, like on a platform, about my story. Have I shared it on social media and things like that? Just here and there, yes. But that was also something that my therapist had encouraged me to do, because, at first it was, oh, I don't know, and what will people think of me? And that comes from the perfectionism, which from what my therapist said, which is a very common thing of, building your self-worth and thinking that, well, if I'm perfect, then I'll be chosen, thus the chosen of being given away as an adoptee. It's all interconnected, and it's actually just really fascinating, the emotions that you have to go through and really rebuild. And so once I reached a point of saying, you know what, I'm comfortable and confident, and I have reached a point of being okay with my story, now it's my testimony. And now I want to continue being the best version of myself and encourage others to do by sharing my truth. But you have to reach that point where you're comfortable with sharing that and giving yourself the time to be, because it's a lot to process.
Yeah.
And then you can reach that point of personal development. And a lot of times I make myself available to other adoptees and say, hey, if you just need a listening ear, not in a way of taking away from someone who's professionally trained in that regard, but sometimes it's just, well, how did it work for you? Or how did you find your family? Or what resources did you go through to find out all of your information? And that to me is like so therapeutic, because I remember in my journey being a teenager, having all these questions, and my mom too, when you're the adoptive parent, I don't think they really arm you with what to do when that day comes that your child either finds out that they're adopted or they're told. Yeah. So there was a moment for my adoptive mother to learn with me on this journey, and it brought us even closer. So it's been beautiful to help others and be a resource for adoptees.
Yeah, because you were 17. It was 17 before your mum told you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And actually she had it planned on my 18th birthday. We both love Celine Dion, and she wanted to take me to Vegas to see Celine Dion, and we were going to go to dinner, and she was going to tell me. And found out it was a sibling of mine that actually spewed out, that I was adopted, and did that, unfortunately, to try to hurt my mom's feelings. But, God always has a different plan, and it brought us closer than ever. And now I'm able to use my story to help others. And there's always beauty in the pain, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. Somebody was, Donna. I've just forgotten the surname. Donna, who's been on the show. She's from the UK, but now she lives down in Dominica. Donna Joseph, Donna Joseph. Beauty and pain. It's the two sides of it. Yeah. So did you say this is the first time you've been on a podcast to share this stuff, right?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
This is my first.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for doing that. And because you used to be a news anchor, right? So there's this. I can tell there's this confidence about you, right?
It's interesting now, because it's like I went from years of telling other people's story to now being in a position where I can share my own. And I think it's such a great testament to where I am in my journey. And I love that we're talking about healing and thriving, because it was 10 plus years of searching. And then you have to add in just doing the work of me rebuilding myself, and reminding myself that I'm worthy, and that I'm confident, and that I deserve all of the great things that any other child should. Just because a decision was made beyond my control, it doesn't have to follow me. And just also remembering to give the parent who made that decision the grace and understanding that maybe they were not afforded, because in me meeting my birth family, I was able to find out a lot of the things that were happening in the background of my mother's life at that time, which made her have to make her decision. And so once you reach a point of not being angry, and it turns into appreciation, and it turns into being grateful, I think it just catapulted my healing to being able to say, you know what? That was the best decision she could have made at her time. And there was love in that decision, not a matter of wanting to not be with your child, because every mother wants to be with their child. But because of her decision, I've been able to be surrounded by an amazing adoptive family, and use my voice to help others, to just remind them that healing is not linear. It's not going to be something that happens in a month. It might not happen in a year, and that's okay. We have our entire lives to really unpack this, and that's been the best thing for me to do.
Yeah. Have there been particular moments of healing on your journey? Because you say it's not linear, and I totally agree. But there, but there are stages. It's not a state for me. It feels like particular moments rather than stages. How does it feel for you?
Yes, I think there are certain moments where I would feel that I was progressing, and it was from the day that I remembered my birthday being the same day that my mom made her decision. That was a big one for me, because on that birthday, I forgave her. And that was a big thing, because for so long I had questions of why, because I have an older sibling. She had a son before me. So, those questions of, well, you kept the boy, but you didn't keep the girl, or anything like that. Those types of questions kind of try to sneak in. And then that kind of attacks your self-worth and your value system. And so instead, I remember at that age, I just said, you know what, she did the best that she could and made a decision. And my adoptive mother loves me to the moon and back, and I couldn't be more grateful. So I remember that being a very catalyst moment in my healing journey. And then I also remember the day that I was able to connect with my therapist, who specifically works with adoptees. For so long, I was working with therapists, nothing against them, but they weren't attuned to the unique challenges that an adoptee has. It's not just about me sitting here and spewing out how I feel, and then they say, well, well, what do you think about that? Or how does that? No, we really need to unpack it. And then we need to restore the holes that have been left because you didn't have your mother. And yes, as though I had my adopted mother and I was surrounded by love and everything, it doesn't negate from the fact that you still have questions about where you come from. And just because we have a legal system that isn't always in favor of adoptees, I do see the value of having therapeutic support from someone who knows the adoptive experience, because it's not the same, I think, as someone who's just going through any other traumatic experience. There's some really unique things that need to be talked about, that I think only someone who has that counsel background, but also the understanding and knowledge of being an adoptee. So though that was a big thing too. And it's been great to be able to go to someone whenever I kind of slip back. Sometimes I do, if it's in just day-to-day experiences and she's just like, well, oh, see, we're kind of slipping back. You are worthy, you are valuable. There's affirmations that sometimes you'll have to say to me and I have to repeat it because it's a daily commitment that you have to make to really reach that point of healing.
Yeah. So you've used the word self-worth, and obviously we're talking about self. What do those words mean to you? Self-worth and self and identity.
Yeah. Even though it's a personal commitment, it really is important to have that supportive environment and the supportive people around you in order to really be at your best. And I think it's so tough whenever I am able to speak to adoptees or be a resource to adoptees, and they're really trying to go through this experience, this journey alone. I couldn't have imagined. There's just so much misinformation out there. There's just so many things that to do it alone is, in my opinion, almost impossible, from just the different support groups and which nonprofit and if you're in a closed adoption versus an open adoption or all the different things. To me, I think to really reach the point in my own journey where I was able to stand firm on self-awareness and my value of myself came from having my mother's love and support there with me, because she never felt less of my mother just because I found out that another woman gave me life. If anything, I thanked her for kind of taking that baton from my birth mother and saying, here we go, I'll take her all the way. And having my therapist who I'm consistent with, it's just being diligent and making that promise to yourself while also putting the resources around you and leaning on them, because you can't do it on your own. It's really hard. And so being able to understand that for you to be at your best means that you have that support system in place.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So you've used the word grace a couple of times, and you've used the word God, right? So is religion a big part of your? Is that a big part of your life?
Yes, it's helped me through a lot. And though I'm more spiritual than religious, just because I believe that everything in the adoptee experience is just so unique to the individual, from the decision of how the parent decided to do the act to how you decide to heal and what that journey looks like for you. For me, being able to go more of the spiritual route has allowed me to tap a lot of different energies and different resources to reach my level of utopia and my ability to sit and be content with where I'm at, and to forgive my mother, and to open space in my heart for my birth family that I'm now connected with and building and forging relationships with, and for me to also be in a space where I can take on others who are adoptees and help them. That comes from just being able to say, okay, I am aware and I am able to be there for myself, and I'm willing to also do it for others. And spirituality has helped me do that for sure.
And one of the things that intrigues me is this balance between can we call it, psychological and spiritual aspects of our healing. How do you see that mix? And from, as you say, every experience and every journey is unique, but how do you see the relative importance, how those two sit together?
Yeah, because psychological to me, when I hear that and thinking about, healing through this journey and it being a lifelong journey at that, you're trying to logic your way through an emotional experience. And in my opinion, I don't think you're going to get very far. And I know that from experience, because when I found out, I had a lot of questions, and I was trying to logic my way through. Well, how did she reach this decision? Why didn't she make it an open adoption? Why did she do this? Why did she keep one child and not the other? And once you step out of the logic and step into, what, I have feelings and emotions that are very big right now. And rather than trying to logic through, of trying to make sense of something that happened, like the act, I'm going to allow myself to lean into these feelings, whether they make you cry, whether they make you angry. Every emotion, every feeling is valid. Once you lean into that, you're going more into, I think, that spiritual realm of saying, I'm okay with experiencing this and taking it full on, instead of trying to logic it. Because there's so many emotional elements that I think a person has to go through in this journey to reach their highest potential, because it's okay to feel how you feel once you find out you're adopted, or once you maybe slip back as you're trying to progress and work through your emotions, because adoptees take on a lot. There's a lot of questions that happen because the decision was made beyond your control. And so instead of trying to put your mind at play, put your heart at play and allow yourself to feel. And that's what's helped me leaps and bounds in my own journey.
Yeah. Do you remember the moment when you realized it? Because I think there's genius in what you just said. We're trying to logic our way out of feelings, and it doesn't work. Do you remember the moment when that occurred to you at all?
Yes, it happened for me. It's when I met my birth family. Because and the funny thing is, I met my birth family and we were only separated by a town. The year that I met them, I was in a town that was about an hour away from them. And so I enlisted a private investigator because, it was just so difficult to try to go the route of petitioning the courts and doing all of that. So I enlisted a private investigator who I thought was going to throw my case out because it took so long for her to get back to me. And I'm like, oh my gosh, is she going to be able to help me? But she even said to this day, she was like, your case was the hardest case that I've had, but it was the most rewarding, because she remembers when she was able to call and tell me, I think I found your dad, and they're only an hour away from you. And I'm like, what? I could have ran into them at Target or something. And my siblings and we all have the same FaceTime. And so I would have thought I was looking at my twin on aisle 5 and been like, do I know you? And so for me, meeting my birth family and being able to sit down and talk to my dad, talk to my brother and my sisters. My brother even said, even though we never laid eyes on each other, this is where that spirituality comes in. He said, I always felt like I had a sibling after me, because there's 4 of us all together. And when we met, he was like, I have dreamt of you. I have felt like you were a part of the equation, but we just never knew who you were. And so that's where the spiritualism comes in, because it's like, we're all connected in a way. Where you're supposed to be is where you're supposed to be. And so that was a beautiful moment for me too, because going up, leading into it, I had all these questions I wanted to ask them, and tell me about this and tell me about that. What was her favorite color? What? And instead I said, you know what? I'm not going to inundate them with a bunch of questions. I'm just going to walk in and let us feel and relish in this moment of meeting each other, and then we can try to, you know, deal with the questions and stuff later. And I'm so glad that I did, because we were all just in awe, and it was such a magical moment. And both of my adoptive parents were there. It was just this beautiful reunion. And I know that is not the case for everyone. And I always like to let people know that if your story doesn't end with this magical reunion, sometimes it's just the beauty of having the knowledge of your last name or knowing where you came from. And that can be enough for some people, and that's okay. Because my birth mother is not with me. I never got the chance to lay eyes on her. But being able to have my siblings and my family with me to this day has really been the spiritualism of it, because I truly believe that if I didn't lean into the emotions that I needed to before meeting them, it wouldn't have been as euphoric, because I had already dealt with the logic leading up to that moment, and I allowed myself to feel when we met.
Yeah. So what does connectedness mean for you then, Aubrey?
Connectedness to me is something that you allow to happen on your own terms, because I'll go back to my sentiment of everyone's closure, everyone's search and reunion is different. There was, because I'm on the board of Adoptees United, and it's led by Greg, who has a background in law. And there's a lot of times we're seeing like legal and bills that are coming out that are that are forcing reunion. And sometimes the board is led with adoptees. We're always saying to ourselves, sometimes reunion doesn't have to be forced. Sometimes they literally just want that birth certificate to know their last name and do their own their own processing of that. And so to me, the connectedness is on your own terms. If you want to connect with your flesh and blood and your family and all of that, that's on you. That's if you want to. And it's no one's right to force it or to encourage it or anything like that. It's totally up to you. And so for me, I sought it out, and I was able to connect with Greg, and actually, I found my private investigator by hitting her up on email, a cold email. She didn't know me from Adam's house cat. And she was so kind and intrigued by my story, and saw how I kept hitting roadblock after roadblock, and said, I want to help you, because this is the very reason why I do what I do, because there's so many barriers for people who it was a choice made beyond your control. And so to me, because I sought out my family, that connection happened on my own terms. And if someone just wants that paper that allows them to know their last name, that's their connectedness, and that's okay too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, you're talking about connectedness on two levels. So one is the kind of like a spiritual connection, and we're all one. That, you know, people say that we're spiritual being having a human experience. Yeah, there's connectedness on one level, a spiritual connection, but then you're talking about also connection at perhaps a more physical level.
Speaking in terms of the search and reunion, because a lot of times when everyone speaks of adoption, that's what people lead to. You know, they immediately think of, you know, oh, someone's adopted, they want to find out who their family is, they meet their family, and, you know, it's a Disney movie. And that's not the case for everyone. And I think, you know, the more that we can speak about the true and authentic experience of everyone's journey with an adoption, the better that we are, and being able to be able to create spaces for everyone. Because for some folks, it's not about their end journey is not about meeting the families. It sometimes is just knowing the information. And for some people, it's about meeting the family and getting the information. And to me, that's where that connectedness comes in, because it's something that you should be able to do and achieve on your own terms. And that's why with our organization, we're fighting left and right for the legal rights for adoptees, because for whatever reason, it is just not there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Can I take you back to the kind of the personal development, self-esteem, perfection perfectionist stuff that you were talking on earlier on. So, one of the things that comes to my mind, I think of personal development, and I think of self-development, and there's that. There's a premise there that there's something not right with us.
Yeah,
Something's wrong with us, right? Something's wrong with us. Something that we need to develop. Like it's like I'm a person. I need to develop my person. That kind of for us as adoptees, it seems like it's actually a thing that is kind of reinforcing our belief that of there's something being wrong with us. Do you see what I mean?
Yes. And that's actually the more that I talk to my therapist, just being in this position and point in my healing journey, it's something that a lot of adoptees experience, because you're thinking, well, the parent decided to not keep me. Well, was there something wrong with me? That is immediately what a lot of adoptees tend to think, because it's something you can control yourself. If you find out or you create this reality where it's like, oh, it's because I XYZ, you can deal with that because you can control and say, okay, well, I did that, so I won't do that again. But you can't control where if you say, oh, well, my mother was working 3 jobs at this time, I already had another child, and or it was religious reasons, maybe she had you out of wedlock, or there's just so many, you can't control that. So logically, you really can't fathom or work through trying to logic someone else's decision making, but you can put the pressure on yourself and say, well, it was my fault. The parent didn't keep me because I was the problem. And that is a very dangerous place, because it's not your fault. The decision was made without your counsel. You were included in the decision. The goal, I'm sure, for a lot of folks that make this choice is to give the child a better life as best they can. And to do that, putting the child up for adoption is the best way to do so. But there's a lot of unpacking that has to happen with that. And it has been, even for me, in just building up that self-worth of saying you were valuable, you were loved when that decision was made, and reminding yourself that, because if not, I think it really eats away at the value that you place on yourself. And it leads into perfectionism a bit, because if I was perfect, she would have kept me, Simon. If I was perfect, I wouldn't have even been in this scenario, but that's not the case. This is actually, if you can embrace this being a part of your story and give grace to the parent that made that decision, to me, that's what's catapulted my healing, and being able to accept that as a blessing rather than a curse.
Okay. So you've used the grace word again there. What does grace? It sounds great. Do you know what I mean? Like, but what does it mean? What does it mean to you, grace?
It means accepting that I'll never hear from my mother's own mouth how she reached that decision. I'll never know what was going through her mind or her heart at that time. I'll never know if she had anyone by her side as she reached a very important decision. I'll never know any of those things. And so instead of having anger towards someone I've never met, but I know had to have love in her heart and mind when she made that decision, I'm agreeing to extend her the level of understanding as best I can in this human realm, and giving her I'm just kind of breaking that barrier of disconnection and allowing us to be connected in a way of saying, you know what, I know you did the best you could at that time, and I just want to live a life where I'm not upset. I'm not carrying any negative energy with me for a decision that you made. Instead, I'm going to do my best to understand and give you that love that you gave to me, but doing it in a way where it makes sense. And to me, it makes sense by just saying, I give you the grace of your decision, even though I really wish that there was an opportunity for me to know more about what was going through your mind and your heart at that time, but I'm not going to have that. And instead, I'm just going to do the best I can to go through this journey and heal myself, but also helping others who might have similar experiences. And that's therapeutic for me too.
This is a bit of a strange question, but it's occurred to me, so I'm going to ask it anyway, right? Do you think that, or like, yeah, let's ask it in a kind of maybe a more user-friendly way. To what extent do you think we as adoptees are aware of this feeling of not being good enough? Are we, are we consciously aware that we don't feel good enough? Maybe a better question would be, what percentage of adoptees would you guess are aware, consciously aware of the feeling that there's something wrong with them? Is it something that we're aware of, or is it just lost in anger towards other people? What? I don't know.
I think I love this question though, because the feeling of, or the thought process of questioning your value, questioning your worth, I think it's in your subconscious originally. It's there and it's kind of hidden in the shadows, but it could show up in your actions, which is the perfectionism. If I collect titles, if I collect accolades, if I collect positions, if I get all of these things that then outwardly show value because you're top in the company, or you're most highly acclaimed, or you're most awarded, there's value in that in the physical realm. And in your subconscious, you're feeding that, well, see, I have value. See, I'm worthy. See, I'm all these things. And instead of chasing those titles or those accolades, because subconsciously you're really chasing the acceptance of a parent that you didn't get, it shows up in your subconscious. But once you are understanding and you come face to face with it, and that's that big emotional versus logic thing. Once you come face to face and say, I didn't care about getting all of those awards. I didn't care about reaching the top of the corporate ladder. I wanted my mom. And once you get to that point and say, you know what, I need to sit in this for a minute and realize that feeling is valid, then it comes to your conscious awareness. And then you say, you know what, you then are able to decipher between things that you want and you value versus things that you were using to kind of supplement a subconscious fear. Because the fear is, if I don't have these things, I don't have value, but you already had value. You just allowed an experience to diminish that. And you have control of being able to say, no, I am valued, I am loved, I am worthy. And those are affirmations I'm saying every single day, even though someone might think I'm leaps and bounds in my healing journey. Thriving and healing is not linear. And I have to remind myself that. And it sometimes rears its head in dating too. You have to really be conscious of that. So it's just, and I think it's something too, that if someone can really, enforce in their own healing journey of putting themselves first, whatever that looks like for them, it's going to make them not only a better person, but a better partner, a better parent, a better sister, brother, whatever the case is, because you're not pouring from an empty cup anymore once you come to terms with that. Yeah.
So for me, one of the moments was when I got my adoption file. So here there's one rule for England. Okay, there's one law for England. There's one law for Scotland. There's one law for Wales. Okay. When the files were opened in 1975 for England.
Wow.
right? And I was born in 1967. So when I got my adoption file, which was probably, I don't know, about 8 years ago, I can't remember exactly. One of the things that landed for me, a healing moment, was when I found out that the plan for me to be adopted was in place before I was born.
Mm. Mm.
And so what that meant to me was my birth mother didn't give birth to me, take one look at me and say, I don't want this one.
Right.
You know, I'm making it light of this clearly, but that was a big thing for me. So it wasn't personal.
You're right.
It wasn't personal. It was planned ahead of time. And there's a bit of logic there.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? There's a bit of logic I can kind of hang on to.
Yeah.
Somehow there that I uncovered in the story, which I wouldn't have uncovered if I hadn't kept on going, right? So I got my I got a piece of paper with my birth mother's name on it, and I can't remember what I thought I was going to see on that piece of paper. It's probably 10 years or so ago. But I stopped after that, and so I saw her name, and then I saw that I'd had a name before. Right? So you're talking to Simon Jonathan Ben, but she called me David Anthony Flower, right? Wow. So, but then I stopped at that point, and then I probably about 6 months later, I was in a therapist chair, and I had a meltdown, and I realized, no, I've got to go on with my search, because I'm not going to let this fear of her rejecting me again holding over. So that's how I got that's how I got to my file, right? So there's like we're just hanging on to a little. You're hanging on to a little thing like that, you know. It's those moments where for me, the healing moments are when you see something like that. When you saw that you put all the questions to one side, and you just kind of fell into the moment of the connection with the birth family.
Yeah.
Family. Have there been any other particularly profound moments, Aubrey, for you?
You know, I'll touch back on the spiritual element of this a little bit, because going through this journey there's just no way I couldn't have lent more into the spirituality aspect of it, because there's just no way to logic some of the things that happened, and one being my birth. Even my parents, they weren't romantically together at the time of my birth, but there was the nurse who delivered me, who was actually dating my dad at the time. And she was the one who told my dad and said, I think I just delivered your child. And he was like, what do you mean? I don't have, I have a son. What are you talking about? And it was my dad who actually told me that when we met. And I just thought, okay, this is either the perfect script for a Lifetime movie, or this is just like a crazy spiritual way for the universe to tell you, hey, there's this child here. But it was just so out of bounds that, imagine, the person you're dating calling you saying, Simon, I think I just delivered your kid. And you're like, get off my phone, I'm being punked. Where's Ashton Kutcher? And to this day, when my dad tells me the story, he's like, I and then after that, I couldn't stop thinking about it. And I knew it was a girl. I just didn't know anything about you. I didn't know what happened or anything like that. And once I found that out, I then realized that from the decision to carrying me for those 9 months, a lot of my mother's experience with me was alone. And once I found that out, it was easier for me. Well, not easier. It was never, this process has never been easy, but it put me in a better position to say, you know what? I couldn't have imagined not even being 25, having a child already, not being romantically connected to the person who I'm sure you loved and cared for, and then having to decide how to take on this added responsibility. And then you have, culturally, my family is Nigerian. There's a lot of things that fall onto the mother of that at that point, where it's like you're out of wedlock. And there were so many things on her shoulders at that time that I feel like the obvious choice that some would probably think she should have made, she didn't. And so once I switched from being so angry and in my head about things, and realized she granted me life. And at a time where there was so much on her shoulders and so many things that were kind of working against her, she still chose to give me that gift. And that's what allowed me to give her the grace of forgiving her, even though I'll never be able to hug her and say thank you. And that's truly what has helped me catapult my healing, because I've stepped away from being angry and stepped into love, and it helped me leaps and bounds.
Yeah. So, did you find out when she passed, your birth mom?
She did. She passed. The agency that I was adopted through, in Florida. There was the process of being able to connect to the birth family when you're in a closed adoption. A lot of the approval still stems on the adoptive parent side. So I could call, which I did once I found out, every other day, and say, hey, I want to send a letter, or hey, can you tell the family an update, or I just graduated high school, or can I send my prom pictures? That wasn't allowed. So I'm calling every day and like updating a caseworker in hopes that she'll like maybe bring it up to my birth family. And each interaction, whether it was me sending a letter or me asking for them to make a phone call, that cost. It could have ranged from $200 to $800. It could have ranged from a lot of different price points. And after a while, that starts to add up. And I remember I called the caseworker one fated day and said, hey, and this was in around 2017. And I just said, I'm about to graduate college. This is a huge milestone. I really want her to see my cap and gown pictures. Like I want the family to see that I'm accomplishing things. I'm doing well for myself. And can I send it to you? If it's on your heart, I know you're not supposed to do this, but if I send it to you and you feel like you could do it, it would really make me happy. And she said, well, I can't do that, but I'll try and call her. Because if she could get my mother to say, audibly, yes, I'll accept Aubrey's pictures, we could have really hit a breakthrough there. And so she said she called her, and that she said, well, your mom answered the phone, but she was really rushed. And we can't rush her. We can't force anything on her. And I was like, okay, so that's it. Can I still send you the pictures? And I wasn't allowed to do any of that. And I remember that year, being 2017, being the year I just really kept calling, and something just kept telling me to keep trying to get through the agency to get to my family. And when I met my birth family, thanks to my private investigator in 2020, that year is when my dad said, we lost your mom to breast cancer in 2017. And I said, that's crazy, because something, going back to the spiritual aspect of it, something about that year made me want to fight the hardest to find you guys. And to find out that it was the year that she was struggling the most shows me that we are truly interconnected. But I didn't know where this urge was coming from. I fought in 2017 hardest than any other year. And I had known since like 2011. So it was something about that year. And then once I found out that it was the year that, she lost her life, I thought, wow, I truly think it's because I felt like, if it doesn't happen now, will I ever meet her? And I did.
Yeah. And the agency's charging you for this stuff?
Yeah, I mean, it's a cost to because I don't have the legal rights to have access. So the agency is not doing you a solid, by extending, communication.
Charging you for it.
Yeah, there had to have been an audible or written, even though they sent letters and things like that. A parent would have had to say, yes, we will listen to Simon, or yes, we will reply to Simon, or anything like that. And if that doesn't happen, then you're just outreaching, and there is a cost associated.
Nuts.
Mind blowing. I know. It's mind blowing because it's so disappointing that there's a way to make money off of someone's most vulnerable moment in life. It's really disheartening.
Yeah. But you're just taking it all stride, and you're taking this all in your stride.
Thank you.
See, adoption is very different here in the UK. Very different. So the government controls adoption in the UK because the government pays the agencies. But the adoptive parents don't pay.
Really?
Yeah. They pay some court fees, which might be, like a couple of $100 maybe, but they don't pay. Like, so the adoptive parents don't pay. So this whole kind of this price on our heads, as adoptees, makes me feel kind of sick, and it sets the system up for trafficking and stuff, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely. And we've got a price on our heads, and different colors, different prices. That makes me sick as well. And I think it adds another layer of trauma to what's going on, because like we've had a price on our head.
It's a very costly experience to go through, and it's one that I didn't choose for myself. So when you just think of starting that healing journey and going through, I mean, resources cost, assistance costs, therapy costs, all of these things. And then you're hit with legal barriers that say, well, based off the structure of your adoption, we cannot give you your original birth certificate. We cannot let you know the time you were born, the last name. The agency I was adopted from gave me non-identifiable information that I held onto for dear life. And it said, your mom was brown skin with brown eyes and brown hair. And I said, well, great. I could see her at any Target tomorrow and say, hi, mom. It's just, they give you just enough breadcrumbs, I think, in a way of like, well, hold on to this. Well, I should have the legal right to hold on to what's factual, which is my last name. And I think also too, my dad didn't really understand the complexity of a closed adoption because he really wasn't also involved in the decision making as well. I later found out. And he even said, he would have advocated for it not to be so restricted because it just doesn't seem fair to me to have been withheld from my family, or from just having my birthright of knowing my last name, all because of a decision that someone made in their most vulnerable. So it's just this really unfortunate series of events. And that's why, with the organization Adoptees United, we are doing so much that we can to advocate for legislative change. Because in America, it's just really disappointing that if you don't have the money to have access to the resources or the people who can help you, you really feel like you're in this hopeless cycle, and that your healing journey really can't be as transformative as it needs to be because it takes money to play. And that is really disappointing that is the case. Indeed. For something as personal as needing to know where you come from.
Yeah. Did you feel a spiritual connection with your birth mother, like retrospectively, when your dad was talking about the stuff in 2017, or sorry, your birth family was talking about that stuff? Did you feel that?
I did, because he actually, the year that we met in 2020, he said, do you want to see her grave? She was buried in Florida. And I said, oh, well, I guess if I'm going to do it, I need to do it now. And so with my birth dad, my adoptive dad, my adoptive mom, all there with me. We went to her grave, and I remember just feeling a sense of, the best word I could summon is like alone. I just remember standing there looking at my dad and my mom, and I just said, I was like, she was alone up until the day. And I felt that with conviction, the way I said it. I was like, whether it was her decision to place me for adoption, or whether it was her healing that she had to go through with battling cancer, everything about the energy I felt at her gravesite was very alone. And I looked at him and I just said, I don't know what that meant for you as being, her partner, because they got married later in life. They were married by the time she was battling cancer. And I just said, I just think a lot of the decisions that she reached were decisions that she formulated and acted on herself. And that's really tough, because we're talking about some very big decisions that impacted other people's lives that one person was responsible for, and were in their own emotional state, in their own, going through their own lively lifehood experience. And so once I started finding out all of these things of what my mother was carrying, I just realized I cannot be mad at someone that was going through so much, that probably, I think if I were born in her care, I probably would have taken it on that I needed to be her savior. And that's something that my therapist and I actually, we talk about very often, because even though you're in the womb, I do believe that the child can feel or take on what the mother is carrying. And I think that's how I was able to feel so strongly at her gravesite. Like, wow, I wish I could have been there for you. I wish I could have supported you in some way. But then you look at it and you're like, you were the child. It was never your responsibility to have to do that or anything. And so that's where the grace of me saying, you know what, her decision to place me up for adoption freed me from feeling like I needed to save her, because she saved me.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
That must have been some moment for you.
Oh yeah. That once I was able to kind of dig through those emotions with my therapist and use the words save and to say, I would have had to like care for her. I look at that experience and I think that probably would have been my reality. I would have taken it on like, well, what can I do to make things easier for her? What can I do to maybe I need to be class president, maybe I need to be top of my class, or I need to be this or that, or become a doctor or a lawyer, all these things, which would have been to feeding that subconscious of value and worth, when again, those are things that you have the choice to take on or not. And I think because of the decision that she made, it freed me from that, of feeling like I had to do anything to earn a mother's love. She loved me already by making that decision.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
That feels like a good place to bring it in, unless there's something that you want to share that I've not asked you about.
No, I think this is great. And I'm so grateful for your platform, Simon, because a lot of times when people talk about adoption, they talk about the process itself, or they talk about the beautiful Disney movie ending. But this healing, this transformative and sometimes emotionally ugly experience that one has to go through, it's real. And if we don't talk about it more, I don't think people will realize that it's a process that is worthy of going through, and us being able to highlight the resources that's available to folks. And it's been purposeful for me to even go through my own experience and then seek out action to help others by being on the board with Adoptees United, because I'm learning so much about transracial adoption and adoptions that happen out of the country. And there's just so many things of your experience versus my experience and how it varies everywhere. But the same desire is wanted in the end, of wanting to know where you come from. And with your platform and the work of different nonprofit organizations, we can help each other get one step closer.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. You can't see this, listeners, but because obviously it's a podcast. But Aubrey's got this just absolutely fantastic smile that's just lit up my my screen for the last hour and a quarter as we've been talking. It's great.
Thank you so much. This has been therapeutic. You don't even know.
Thank you, Aubrey. Thank you, listeners. We'll speak to you very soon. And as always, like, check out the links. We'll put a link to Adoptees United in the show notes, a link to the, if you're looking for an adoptee as a therapist, there'll be a link to Grow Beyond Words therapist directory in the show notes as well, and links to Aubrey's social stuff, because she does some very interesting, like you're into travel. She's a travel counselor, like a travel advisor, and she also does real estate as well. That's not something in the UK. Those two things don't sit together. You do one or the other.
We do it all.
Yeah. Good on you, Aubrey. Thanks, listeners. We'll speak to you again very soon. Take care. Bye-bye.